introduce you, I'm going to read a little bit of their bios. Mary Martin, Alice Bryan and Claudia Henning. Now they're going to be sharing on the topic of beginning community connections from then to now. So it's a bit of a history, this one. So Mary Martin, first of all, to share a little bit about her, was first exposed to the three principles in 1998 and has considered herself a three principles practitioner since 2004. She currently serves as Director of the Division of Community and Family Support in the Office of Early Childhood at the Colorado Department of Human Services in Denver, Colorado. And then Alice Bryan, she co-facilitates a three principles discussion group in Des Moines, Iowa. Obviously, and that's in the USA, in case anybody didn't know that. And she serves as board member and past vice president of Three Principles Network, a not-for-profit. She's also been organising and implementing community trainings in schools, community and business since 2004. And she also serves on the Youth Justice Initiative Advisory Board. So Claudia Henning, over 15 years ago, she was invited by a West Des Moines police chief to take the lead in creating a community initiative that would reduce youth crime. What emerged was a restorative justice initiative that holds youth accountable and mobilises a community of support to help them get on track and become positive citizens. So I know that was a lot of information, and I'm really pleased to hand over, as it were, to Mary, first of all, because this really is a history from then till now, and with there's three ladies to share in a limited amount of time. So what we thought would work probably best is to kick off from the beginning, which was with Mary, and then they're going to kind of flow through. If you want to find out anything more about these ladies, you can find out more on the website, Transforming Community from the Inside Out. So basically, I'm going to hand the mic over to you, Mary. As I said earlier on to you ladies, if there are any questions or comments come in, that will be the only reason I probably interrupt, just to make sure that we're serving the community. Okay.
Thanks, Sheila, so much. So yeah, and whenever I start thinking about talking to people, not just about the work in Des Moines, but just in general, to talk with people about the principles, I always start with Sid. I always go back to the missing link and find something in there to kind of contextualize, where to go with this and how to really start talking about it. So this time I went to the introduction, which I haven't read the introduction to this in a really long time, but it ended up being so appropriate. It's amazing how that happens. So in the introduction to the missing link, Sid says, there are those in this world who believe miracles do not happen. I can assure such skeptics that they do. With hope and faith as beacons, anything can happen. And if these writings bring a second chance of life to just one human being, my work has not been in vain. So when I think of Des Moines, I absolutely think of a miracle. And I'm usually just at a loss of words. In fact, when Lynanne first approached me about talking about what happened in Des Moines, I always come back to this fact that it just happened. It really does feel like it just happened. So having read Sid's words and remembering the miracle, and then I was listening to a clip that Elsie and Chip, it was a YouTube video of Elsie Spittle and Chip Chipman from the Three Principles School. And a couple of things that they said really sort of waked me up to contextualize our story of Des Moines. And I like to start with this just because of that. So one of the things was I was reminded that it really is the feeling and not the words that bring Sid's vision to life for all of us. He always said that it was in the feeling, not in the words, that we would be able to bring the three principles forward to everybody. And it's, I just know that when people are touched by even just a small understanding that something changes inside of us, and frequently it's other people who notice even more than we do. So I love it that people will learn about the principles, and what they'll say is, well, I can't explain it, but I know I heard something. So I think that's just something to keep in mind as we tell the story. And then the second thing that I heard from Elsie and Chip that really just kind of resonated for me, it's the idea that when you see something that touches you deeply, like these principles do, it's natural that we want to share it with other people. But one of the things they reminded me of was the importance of, and I love the way they say this, is just going back to our ordinary lives, and kind of just letting the understanding unfold within us. And forgetting really about the how-tos and the am I doing it right, and just really let it unfold and how it kind of guides us through life and guides us through work. And that's, that was so important for me to read, even just or listen to, just in preparation for talking with you all about what happened in Des Moines. They said something like the power just kind of comes through us. So, I can honestly say, how did it happen? And my answer is, I really don't know. I was just kind of living my life, ended up in Des Moines. Other people were living their lives. And it really did just sort of unfold. So we're going to tell our stories. There are lots of stories in Des Moines, lots of people who've been touched by the principles. And I'm hoping that what we can share about how our stories of how Des Moines unfolded will be helpful to other people if they're interested in doing work in their communities. So I'm going to kick it off. I kind of got the ball rolling when I moved to Des Moines from Denver. Claudia is going to share the amazing story of the Youth Justice Initiative, because that's a story that continues to inspire people in Des Moines and other communities that I know she's shared it in. And then Alice will follow up by sharing really how the network has continued. I moved back to Denver in 2008, and a lot of work has continued to go on. So Alice is going to kind of talk to us about how the principles have continued to unfold themselves and become integrated in the community. So in terms of background, I first learned about the principles when I lived in Denver. I was really looking for a model to sort of legitimize some work that we were doing. Sorry. I was working in a community health setting and public hospital setting, and working on a home visiting program that we were able to develop. And we were doing really well, but we needed to sort of explain our model. So we happened to come across the principles. I went to a training. It was pretty exciting and meant a lot to those of us on the staff who were there. We ended up expanding that program. I got back in touch with some of the trainers and had them come and sort of do an orientation. So really my experience was, maybe a year or two. And the main way that we used it was we staffed cases every week. We had a number of home visiting programs, and we would staff cases to continually learn and to also help each other when we were getting stuck on a case. So the kind of what I really recall about it was when we were stuck, we would say, well, so how do we see this through the lens of the principles? So I came to Des Moines with basically about 4 ideas of my understanding of the principles. One was that everybody, whether you're a client or a direct service provider or a patient, or, all of us have the wisdom inside to know what's best for us. Another idea was that people aren't broken. They don't need to be fixed. The third one for me was that everybody is doing the best they can, given the thoughts that they're having in the moment. And then the last one was, and this one was the one, I didn't really understand that third one that well for myself. It was like every other person is doing the best they can, given the thoughts they're having. I'm not sure that I ever thought, I could excuse myself that way. But anyway, and the fourth one was, if a person's feeling bad or angry or frustrated or stressed or whatever it is, that the best thing for us to do is to just realize it's a low mood and that it'll pass. And, that the best thing to do is just not to do anything until it does pass. And that, I would say, was my understanding. So I moved to Des Moines. My husband took a job here and I moved, and then I took a job with a large hospital system, kind of in their community benefit arena. So A number of people in the community had applied for and gotten a Robert Wood Johnson grant. Our hospital system ended up being sort of the fiscal agent for it, but it was really a community project. So I had three primary responsibilities. One was to expand and manage a free primary healthcare clinic, which was called Clinica. The second one, and the one that this kind of really helped the principles unfold, was to develop a grassroots outreach program in the inner city where a lot of families were really struggling to connect with healthcare. They were uninsured or underinsured, and it was just a focus area to really improve access to healthcare. And then the last one was just to lead a community coalition that was going to continue to work on how we could improve access to healthcare. So as I started just doing my job, I needed to hire somebody to lead the part of the program that was the outreach program in the inner city. And I knew, I was new to Des Moines, and so I knew that I needed to ask people in the community for recommendations about, who would be good to lead that program. And I was referred to this young woman who I was told had great promise and was sort of an up-and-coming leader in the community, and her name was Rachel Lewis, and I think she might even be on the call. So, Rachel. So anyway, we were gonna just meet and talk. So just to kind of get to know each other, I could tell her a little bit about my ideas because we were gonna have to develop this program from scratch together. So I remember we met at Java Joe's, which is a coffee house. I don't know if it's still there, you guys, but a coffee house in in Des Moines. And we were going to meet for an hour, and we talked for about 3.5 hours, I think, that day. And there was no question, but this was exactly the right person to lead this initiative. So, but the interesting thing was Rachel kept asking me, like, I think I had the feeling that she was interviewing me for the job because she was really tired. She had already seen enough of people coming in with the latest, greatest idea about how to fix that, fix the inner city, fix their community. And so she was going to be a little bit skeptical, rightly so. So I really, when I look back on it, I do feel like Rachel was interviewing me more than I was interviewing her. But anyway, it was a no-brainer. We really connected about everything. So we started developing the program, and one of the things that she did was start asking me, like really kind of drawing out of me what was behind kind of the way I saw things and the way, just my ideas about doing the work. Because she said, she was kind of really cynical and not very likely to trust another person coming in, to the community. So I started trying to articulate some of these 4 little ideas that I had. And as we talked, and she kind of pulled out of me the fact that, well, yeah, we had a training, and yeah, there were a couple of books I read. One was Modelo by Roger Mills, and actually by Jack Pransky, but about Roger Mills's work in Modelo, in the housing community in South Florida. And the other one was, I think it was Roger's Health Realization Primer, I believe was the name of it. So, that's the little bit of experience I had. So fast forward a little bit, and Rachel was doing a community health leadership program. And she came to me because she had to do a project. It was a year-long professional development opportunity. So she came to me and she said, okay, I have to do this project, and I have an idea. I really want to bring one of those trainings that you had in Denver to Des Moines. And I went, oh, okay. God, that's cool. So we talked about it, and she said, she really was kind of starting to formulate this idea. She said, I really just like the way you think about things. It's so refreshing. We have just kind of seen so eye to eye on this. And I would just love it. She said, imagine, the people that we're serving through the Neighborhood Health Initiative, they circle through, they're helped by a lot of different organizations. There are lots of service providers and helpers and supporters in the community, all touch kind of the same people. And she said, wouldn't it be amazing if we all just kind of had this common foundation that we did our work from? There was just something sort of unifying about that. And of course, thinking about the fact that people aren't broken and they don't need to be fixed was really kind of, I think, at the heart of it for both of us. So I said, well, yeah, sure, that's a great idea, and we would bounce it around. And then I was having a conversation with the president of the Mid-Iowa Health Foundation, who was one of the instrumental community leaders who brought the project to Des Moines, the Robert Wood Johnson project. And she was really excited about what was going on in the outreach project. She, was asking me a lot of questions, and for some reason, I started telling her about Rachel's idea. And, wouldn't this be cool? And she got excited about it. And she said, well, I think Mid-Iowa we could probably come up with $7,000 or $8,000. Do you think $7,000 or $8,000 would kind of help you do this? Because the idea was we were going to throw it out and see what people thought. So we didn't want to really charge people to come to it. So the idea was just, let's give this gift to the community and see if other people see what we see. So Kathy pretty much agreed to fund it. So I went back to Rachel and said, okay, we've got funding. Now what? And so, of course, I didn't know what to do. I wouldn't have known how to pull that off. But I thought, okay, I'm going to call Kathy Casey and Kristen Mansheim, who were from California and who had done the trainings for me in Denver. I'm just going to call and ask, Kristen and Kathy. So talked to them and learned a little bit more. They were doing some great work in Santa Clara County. I think it was through Health and Human Services there. Linda Ramos was a part of that. Roger was really providing a lot of the guidance around that and had trained practitioners there. So, they agreed that they would be glad to come. They would be glad to kind of work with us to set it up, and they would come to train us. Come to do the training. So, so now we had I called Kathy and Kristen. They had agreed to do it. So now we had trainers. We had money. We had to do this thing. So then we started overthinking it, as you might imagine. But the good thing was we had worked together long enough that when one of us would start kind of running it off the rails with our thinking, the other one would say, okay, let's just take a breath. Let's take a breath. So we decided we wanted to, what came to us really was, after taking a breath, was that we wanted to make sure we hit sort of the decision makers in the community, the middle managers of programs, the direct service providers, and then also community community people. We really wanted just folks to be there whose lives would be eventually touched by this. So the way to do that was just start talking to people we knew, talking to our colleagues. So, I had a case manager at La Clinica who had kind of been similarly curious. Karen Reinecke, she started talking to people in the Latina community. Becky Malspoco, who was actually the person I reported to, and actually who Alice reported to at the time at the Family Center? I think that's what we called it. So Becky was excited, and she would talk to people. Kathy started spreading the word. Rachel and I both just started reaching out to people, and it really was with this idea, like, we really think we found this thing that might be really nice for our community, and we just want to put it out there and have people come and just tell us what you think. So no strings, no commitments, anything. We ended up having about 60 people who signed up for it, and we probably had about 40 people who actually stayed for the whole 3-day training. And I get teary every time that I say this, but by the end of the training, it was 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. There were like over 20 people who just wouldn't leave. They were so just touched. They had been so moved by things that they had heard that they just, more people need to know about this. That was really the consensus. More people need to know about this. So we said, okay, so what do we do next? And the thing that occurred to us was, first of all, we wanted to know more. So this group of people started just saying, well, let's just get together. Let's start off by just getting together and talk about what we continue to see. I think we might have read the Health Realization Primer together. I do remember there was a wonderful lake that had a wonderful walking path around it, Grace Lake in Des Moines. And we used to go and we would meet there every couple of weeks and sit around a picnic table, and people would just share what they saw, or we'd read that a chapter in the book and just kind of talk about it with each other, and kind of really did let it evolve. And Kathy and Kristen had agreed to just kind of provide some additional consultation for us, just kind of some guidance of how to do this. And a couple of things that I mostly remember that they said was they would tell us to slow down and they would tell us to let it unfold. Same things, you hear them over and over again, and they're brand new every time you hear them. And she said, the answers will come. You guys will know what to do. I just remember that the conviction, I think, the feeling that they had as they would say that to us and encourage us. So what we came up with was we wanted to do more community trainings. So, I was pretty decent I had a lot of connections with the foundation community, philanthropists in the community. So I was pretty comfortable going and talking with them, two mainly that came through to help us kick this off. Another really exciting and critical partner that came into this, I had been working serving on a internal committee for the hospital that was focused on patient satisfaction and employee satisfaction. And there was a wonderful woman, Connie Ziller, who was kind of a middle manager in the human resources department. She was the leader of that program or that committee. So she was one of the people that I'd reached out to about coming to that initial training. I had sort of, part of our advertising was I shared it with these people that I was on the committee with, and Connie had said, oh, I think I want to do that. So Connie was one of the people who was really touched. And she went back to the hospital and said, we're going to have these trainings, and I just really think it would be great. It would impact our employee satisfaction and possibly our patient satisfaction, and could even spill over into, safety issues, patient safety. She said I could see a lot of things. So she convinced the hospital to support giving people time off if they were employees of the hospital system, to give them time off to go to a training, and also to pay their, I think, $200 registration fee. And if we would have to call it like a pilot project and have some evaluation associated with it, so that was part of what they wanted to justify it. So that immediately, we had no idea how impactful that was going to be, but actually as we started having the community trainings, we had to limit the hospital participation to half of the slots that we had for the trainings, because I think they would have filled up the whole training, and we wanted to make sure it got out to the whole community. So anyway, Kathy and Kristen also, they were hugely helpful with this, because they said, if you can pay our expenses, we'll just take whatever you collect in registration fees as our payment. If it's $100, that's fine. If it's $1,000, that's fine. But they would come and do this training, 3-day trainings for us, and just do it, pretty much at cost until we could get our feet on the ground. So that was another, huge part of it. So we started begging for venues to meet in. We had church basements and church meeting rooms and, all of the free places that you could imagine. We had 20 people there trying to figure out or come up with ideas or have connections of where we could meet. So we got this going. We had enough money. We got money from one foundation who really wanted their money to go to scholarships, which was a wonderful piece of this, because that way we could ensure that community members or direct service providers who were part of a small nonprofit who didn't have a big training budget, that they would still be able to participate. So that was really a nice part of it. And then we had our Mid-Iowa Health Foundation that helped provide just kind of that continuity funding and that bridge funding until we were able to run this based on registration fees. So, and then the wonderful group network that we had begun to call ourselves, everybody pitched in. People handled registration, they brought refreshments, they, conducted, the welcomed people. We just really kind of all pitched in. And honestly, I think for most of us, just the opportunity to listen again for ourselves, just sit through another training was payment enough, for us to spend our time doing that. So one thing morphed into another. I'm checking my notes here to make sure I stay on track and don't take up too much time. But one of the things that happened was people, of course, all started wanting, I want more. At one of the trainings or multiple trainings, there was a wonderful applications video that had been done with Roger and others in California. And it was really inspirational because it kind of talked about bringing, how people are bringing the principles into jails or into schools or into housing projects and things like that. And it was really inspirational. So we started thinking, well, we should have a follow-up. So eventually we were having, when Kathy and Kristen would come in, and later it was actually Chris Heath started helping us as well when we discovered that she was right 3 hours up the road in Minnesota. So Chris Heath got really involved in supporting the community like this. But we knew, we were having like week-long trainings, because we do a foundations training for the first 2.5 days of the week or 3 days, and then we would have a 2-day kind of applications training that people could come back for sort of part 2. So at the same time, this is another sort of example of how things just started rolling out. There was this wonderful young woman who was the school counselor at an inner city middle school. And she had gone to a training and was so touched that she went back the next Monday to her principal, and she said, and even her principal will say, I didn't really understand what she was saying, but I was so moved by what I felt that her principal agreed to send more of their key staff. I think the vice principal and I think the drama teacher for sure went, and there were several other people from the school, that they said the summer training, Kathy would let these folks go to a training as well, and we could see they were struggling with kind of school climate issues. There's just a lot of negativity in the school. Teachers were discouraged, kids were not involved, so they were looking for things that would help them. So Kathy just saw this as a possible way. The principal saw this as a possible way to do that. So they came to the training, and the drama teacher, I have to tell her a bit of her story, in particular, Karen Sissel. She had the idea of teaching the principles to the kids through her drama class. So again, members of the network all volunteered. We didn't know what we were doing, honestly. I mean, we weren't qualified to be teachers in our estimation of being qualified to be teachers, but we volunteered to go in with Karen and teach her classes, and just wing it and figure out how to do it. So we did, and that morphed into starting a drama club, an after-school drama club. And this is traditionally a school setting where people don't really participate in extracurricular activities. I mean, maybe some sports kinds of stuff, but not a lot of extracurricular activities. And Karen had people coming out of the woodwork wanting to be a part of the drama club. So that evolved into them writing a play and performing it. And it was the music of Indira Ari, and they based it on kind of a day in the life of a middle school student who understands the principles, and before and after understanding the principles. So it was really amazing. So that was a lot of fun. We had ended up writing a grant to United Way to fund an ongoing program in the school to help a lot more teachers be able to have substitutes to cover their classes so they could come to trainings. That was something that we did at the recommendation and desire of the principal. So that was great. And then, what else am I forgetting? Oh, I just noted some different ways that the principal started rolling out. There were therapists who were starting to just do therapy from a principal's foundation. Certainly at La Clinica, our case management was based on that. Leadership meetings, all of those kinds of things. Lunch and learns kind of started popping up, especially at the hospital. I think that was one of the first places I remember lunch and learns, where people just wanted to get together and talk more. They just couldn't get enough in a way. So of course Claudia with Youth Justice, who you'll hear about in a little bit, Scarlett, who brought it into mediation training, Carla, who brought it into high schools, her work with high school students. I mean, just one thing after another, just people hearing it for themselves and then just taking it into their ordinary lives and their ordinary day-to-day work and just doing it. So that went on for a couple of years. And then as, with my management hat on, I guess, I started worrying about sustainability, because of course that's a big issue when you're thinking about grants, and knowing that grants are going to go away eventually. And in combination with that, people were so interested in wanting more and started hearing about practitioner training and things like that. So I went back to foundations, and the Community Foundation and Mid-Iowa Health Foundation, and I believe there was one other, I think the Iowa Health Foundation actually helped us, and put together a training and practitioners program that Christine and Kristen did with guidance from Roger and Amy, because they were just starting the Center for Sustainable Change at the time. And of course, Roger had done a lot of training of practitioners in Santa Clara County. So with their guidance, we developed a year-long practitioners training program, and we must have had, I think, over 20 people who committed to the year-long practitioners training. We did that, and we started being able to do community trainings ourselves, and that is kind of where my part of the story ends. And Claudia, do you want to talk about youth justice next, or Alice, do you want to talk about the rest of the story with the
Sure. Thanks, Mary.
Yay.
Hi, this is Claudia Henning. I'm so grateful to be able to share a little bit about our Youth Justice Initiative, YJI. You'll hear me call it YJI because it's a mouthful to say the Youth Justice Initiative, but we are now in our 18th year, and I was one of the individuals in that first training of practitioners program that Mary helped to get started. So thank you very much for doing that, Mary. So we had been in existence, the Youth Justice Initiative, for several years before I ever had heard about the three principles. And so YJI is based on, at that time was based solely, or primarily, but solely, on restorative justice principles. The idea that when we offend or commit an offense or offend others, we have an obligation to do what we can to put things right as far as possible, and that the community has an obligation to assist the person that's done the harm to help them put things right. So I had been invited by our West Des Moines police chief, who was Jack O'Donnell, and he was very involved with community policing. He was actually quite new in our community at that time, and he'd heard about restorative justice through some seminars that or free get-togethers, trainings that I was doing for the larger Polk County. And they knew in West Des Moines that what they were currently doing, the traditional justice system, just wasn't working for young people and teenagers, that it was like a revolving door. And so they knew they wanted something different, but they didn't know what that was. Can you hear that train going by? Can you hear that? So, in our community, the community education director, Linda Sanda, in her organization, community education organization, they, like the police, were saying, wait, when we see our young people that are struggling to have a good life, what we're currently doing isn't working. What's the answer here? Because we've been doing this forever, and doing nothing doesn't work, but sending the cases to juvenile court doesn't work either. So when they heard what I had to say about restorative justice, that victims do want to be able to share how they were harmed, and they want the offender primarily to hear what they had to say and do what they can to put things right, that could make a difference. So they invited us to do something. So Linda Sanda, Chief O'Donnell, and I brought a friend of mine, Scarlett Lunning, to assist as well. And Scarlett, at that time, was working for various organizations, including United Way, that funding organization that Mary was talking about. And she said, Claudia, come on, let's go hear about this three principles work. And I'm I said to her, this is like 5 or 6 years into the Youth Justice Initiative. I said, I'm so busy. I just cannot do it. I can't do it. I just can't do it. But Scarlett was a dear friend of mine, and I went. But I didn't hear much because I was so busy thinking about what was left on my desk at work to do, and the new young people that were coming in that had all these issues that they should be dealing with, and and all of that. So it took me a while to even settle down and begin to hear anything. But I kept going along because of my love for Scarlett. Not because I was hearing something, but because of my love for Scarlett. And eventually, I settled down and I joined the training of practitioners. And still for a while, I didn't hear much. Because I was so busy comparing what I was hearing with what I already knew, that there wasn't a lot of space in my heart or in my intellect to hear anything new. And then when I did, I was frightened, a lot frightened. I thought to myself, wait a minute. I told all these people in West Des Moines that this is what we needed to do, restorative justice with our young people and their families, and things would work differently. But now I think I was a little off. And what are they going to think if I come back to them and say, no, wait a minute, I had it wrong. I was missing something. And I want to tell you about the 3 principles. So I can remember when I first had this, what felt like a really scary moment in the training of practitioners. And Judith Sedgman was teaching our circle that day. And I said, change is hard. And I'm afraid to go back and say, we have to change YJI. And Judith said, that's a thought. And I said, well, what? And she said, that change is hard. And I said, well, yeah, it may be a thought, but nevertheless, it is hard, And she said, no, wait a minute. Change is natural. Change is natural. Just think about life in the ordinary sense. And I believe that what Judith said to me then was really profound, in that when we begin to see and understand how we function, how all of humanity functions naturally, and we look to that and we speak to that, it's really very simple. It really is very simple. So Judith said something to me like, so you get up in the morning and you think you're going to wear, your pink sweater and your gray pants, and you're going to have Raisin Bran for breakfast. But by the time you get downstairs, you're wearing something totally different, and you want something different for breakfast, because change is natural, Claudia. We change our thoughts, we change our ideas, we change all the time. Well, I saw the truth in that. And what I would say is that what happened is that, first of all, what happened was there were enough of us that joined in the community training that began to see something like Mary was talking about, that we knew that we were onto something, and that there wasn't a turning back for us, that we knew that we had seen something and we could see more deeply. And we had the energy and desire to share what we were seeing with others and learn together. And so we began to then have lunch and learns. And Alice Bryan, who's going to be speaking, was part of the lunch and learns, and whomever wanted to come, including all of our case monitors and people from the community and school people, whomever had heard us talk about anything or would respond to our invitation, come learn something new, have lunch with us, bring your lunch and come along. So that's how the desire to learn more and the understanding rippled out into our YGI community and the larger West Des Moines community, so that the understanding of how we all function naturally, to move forward in our lives, to get over life, the situations in our life, that happens naturally within us. It's not something we have to work so hard to make happen. We don't have to write affirmations and put them on the mirror. We don't have to, we don't have to have years of therapy. We naturally get over things. And we may take medicines, we may go see a therapist, and yet it's naturally happening in us all the time to get over life and to move forward in our lives. And so the understanding of the three principles now has become central to everything that we do with our young people. Nearly all of the community members who come in contact with a young person have an understanding of the three principles. All of the case monitors that work one-on-one with the young people teach the three principles using Amy Chen's Spark Inside little book, and life. For instance, now when I first meet the young person, it's natural for me to start talking about how we all function, and if they're feeling insecure, or if they've been thinking that when they meet me I'm going to be really mad. Well, that's natural, because our brains will make stories up to help us figure out our next way forward. They're not the truth. They're simply what our brain has made up. And then I talk to them about, what is your favorite horror movie? Because most teenagers love scary shows. And I'll say, when you're involved in watching your favorite scary show, it feels real to you, right? And even if you're watching it on your TV at home, you get into the movie, you see it, it comes alive in you, you're scared, you believe it, but then you're hungry. And you go up and you get something to eat out of the refrigerator, and then you're not in it anymore. But then you're back in it again later, because naturally that's what our brain does. It brings life to our thoughts within our bodies, and that's where our urges and our emotions and our moods and all of that comes from. So what we've found is that as the young people and their parents and siblings learn about just the naturalness of functioning, the more relaxed they become about their own lives, about the lives of their loved ones, and the less stress they have in their lives. And so when you go into math and you have less stress, you're a better student. And so naturally what we find is that as our young people learn about the understandings, life becomes easier for them, and they achieve a higher level of confidence and success in their lives, and it's in their relationships with their parents and their friends and their teachers. So it's a good thing all the way around. Alice?
I have to unmute myself. There we go. Well, where to go from here with the rest of our time? If I don't share what you want to hear, please submit a question and make sure you get what you need from this session. I just have to say that Mary and Claudia gave a good outline of what's been going on, and the results are just phenomenal, actually. While we were doing our training and doing the evaluations, we kept track of the success, and especially with Youth Justice Initiative these last few years, every single year the results of successful youth in the community just gets better. They do some evaluations that are consistent with what the three principles people have put together, some evaluations, but the recidivism rate for the young people who might reoffend within a year after they leave the program is almost non-existent. It's the best in the county with all of the offender programs. So I got to brag up on Claudia. And I also have gotten to enjoy being a community representative on the circles and a case monitor with the students and work with the parents. And it's just a pretty phenomenal program. So I guess what I want to talk about a little bit is how we did things in the beginning. Mary talked about we got grants and we were all volunteers and we brought in teachers from the larger Three Principles community. That original task force that helped put all of those workshops on or put all those trainings on, some of those people are still working with what we now call the Three Principles Network. We were all volunteer, and I guess that was it. We had some funding, but we didn't have much fundraising. I am looking now at some transitions that are going on with our board members. We do have a board that's all volunteer. We don't have any employees or any staff. We have to do what needs done, and we enjoy that. And then there are a lot of volunteers that show up when we have a training. I guess I want to say that there are so many people out working in the field in the Des Moines area and far beyond. The people that have been to trainings, it's changed their social work practices, relieved a lot of their stress, so they love their work more instead of being stressed out. It's been in and still is in the prisons. There's people that go into the jail and teach people in jail about the principles. There's a women's program that has to do with people that get out of prison and staying out of prison. It's in elementary schools. People will just go and read stories that are Three Principles based. We have a wonderful woman here that wrote a children's book. And she's been reading it to students and having nice results with that. There are people teaching it in the middle schools and in the high schools. We've done a training. Dr. Pettit came in and spoke at Des Moines University, which teaches osteopathic physicians and the health sciences. So we are touching all kinds of people. But it's not just in Des Moines, it's far out. When people come to our trainings, they'll come from all over the state and out of state sometimes. And then they take it back and teach it where they're at. So the way that it keeps moving forward is like a spider web. And I can't even imagine, it has to be in the thousands of people that have had trainings, because back when we had a training every 2 months, we were having 40 people at a time. And sometimes we had larger seminars when we had national speakers come in. But our network, that's what we call ourselves now. We're now a 501c3. We had a lady in the community, Carla Hansen, that helped us apply for that. She'd had some experience with making a 501c3 happen with all the paperwork in the state and all of that. So we are a nonprofit. We have board members, and things have been transitioning. We just lost a few board members because one of them had changes in their life. They've got more accreditation or licensing, and they are expecting more clients. The office where we used to meet was a lovely space in a social work office, and and they have more practitioners, so they're taking up more space, and it's no longer convenient to have us coming in and out. So we'll meet at someone's house, or we're meeting over at Des Moines University. So we just are taking advantage of the goodwill, which is not a problem. Partly what I see us doing now, we've taken on some new board members that one of them works at the middle school where the Callan project was, where the drama program took place. Dana Chandler is going to come on, and Laria Walters is coming on. She's retired from the West Des Moines schools, and she also still works and volunteers with Youth Justice Initiative. So we're going to have a board retreat and get to know each other well again and be a cohesive group so we can move forward in a good way, get to know each other, see what everyone's ideas are, kind of brainstorm what we'd like to do. I think at some point it would be good to survey all the people on our email list. We have an email list now that we can let people know what's happening and if we're having a training. But other than the people that we see at the trainings and in the community on a regular basis, we haven't really asked what's needed out there, what would be helpful. So a lot of things are running through my mind as we think about that retreat is how we move forward with trainings. The other thing is, how do we move forward with funding? We've had some remnants of a grant that we have used for scholarships. We don't have any, well, we do have some operating funds, but it's nothing that really gets replenished on a regular basis. So I'm thinking, how can we do some fundraising? You know, we're kind of a lovely bunch of people. We do a lot of volunteering. We don't charge for our services a lot just because we enjoy what we're doing, which isn't a bad thing. But maybe we need to think about doing something to raise money that also serves the community. We do charge a registration fee when we have a training, but it usually pays for the trainers. We don't really plan a profit. So we need to look at that a little differently, because now we have a website. We never had that before, but there's charges that go along with that on a yearly basis. So I know that we'll get the answers that we need when we start talking about it and just let it set. So it'll come to us what to do, just like it did in the early days with Mary. I'd also like to know what people out there are doing and how we can support them. I know we have a lot of people spread all over that are working, and maybe they'd like a training of practitioners program or something else. I think it would be nice to have opportunities for people to practice teaching out in the community or in small groups. We've had, we just stopped a 4-year-long program where we called it a book club with the Missing Link, and we would talk about it. But what we really did was a drop-in group on a Saturday morning, and people could come as they wanted to, but we just had a conversation with whoever was there and shared what was going on or why we came, and we would relate things back to the principles, or if someone was really stuck or bothered about something in their life, we would share about the principles. So we had some facilitators, but we also taught each other. It was like a round table, and people could share how they were having insights about their life or their issues or what was going on that was great. And it was a joy actually to see people talk about something that was going on and then see the happiness in their face because they saw how that was all happening and it didn't have to be such a big deal anymore. There are still groups going on in the schools. At Callanan, when I talked to Dana, she said that there's maybe around 8 teachers that still get together with her and they just talk about the principles and keep it alive. And they're still sharing it with the kids. Some of the kids that have graduated from Callanan and went on to high school said that they didn't think they would have been as successful in high school if they hadn't had that in middle school. We did some parent and youth work at Callanan too, and that's like youth justice. When we talk with the parents and the kids and the community, they see, and the schools, they just see life in a more well-rounded way and that they're normal. They're not stuck. So we need to have a board retreat. That's in the planning, but we also need to get some more groups going. The lunch and learn that was going on at the social work office isn't going to be happening anymore because now that they have more staff in their office, they won't be having the lunch and learn there anymore. So, you know, we don't want to let everything drop. We're just in a transition period, and that just means there's opportunities to do new things or more things or different things. The school that YJI is associated with, the West Des Moines Schools, Valley Southwoods, the principal there and one of the teachers have a group that they call Lemon Shakers on Facebook. And they have trainings at school for teachers and staff and other people that want to come. So they're training on their own. So it's not just the network that's doing trainings, it's people that are out in the community that are doing trainings as well. I always think it's wonderful when we can encourage people to see our national or global speakers, I guess we have now. That's an opportunity to hear some deep stuff. But I would encourage people out there to have opportunities for yourself to teach others, even if it's your family. I can share that with my own family after I learned about how thought works and how I didn't have to be a victim of my thinking anymore. It changed my life, and that's why I started at that very first group that Mary was talking about when we came back after that initial training, is that I could see all the junk dropping away. And when I shared that with my kids, it created a better relationship with my kids, and that's continued to grow. So I just want to encourage everybody to just not be afraid to try new things. And, you know, if it doesn't work out the way you want, then try something else or see how you might need to shift things. That's what we've done as a network. One thing we did when we were forming the Three Principles Network nonprofit, we pulled together another task force and just asked the community who would like to be a part of a discussion group to talk about how we would form this network and what would our mission be and what would our vision be. Excuse me. So Scarlett, the famous Scarlett that Claudia talked about, excuse me. Scarlett facilitated our discussion group. So I guess you could call it an advisory board. And we got together and used a flip chart and just brainstorm, and we came up with our vision and mission. And from that, some of us became board members. Some of the people on that group didn't want to be board members. So they're still active in the community and sharing and et cetera. So that's how we got started to figure out how to be a board. We had a mission and a vision, and we had a person that knew how to write the 501c3 paperwork and submit that. We got a copy of some bylaws from another group and revised them a little bit to use for our group. And here recently, we discovered that there was something in the bylaws that wasn't working for us. So we had a little subcommittee take a look at that and revise it, how we were doing our decision making. And we had accidentally, even though we all know that the principles that we teach are based on SIDS insights, we didn't have that written exactly in our bylaws. It's on our webpage, and I just want to read that our mission is to create opportunities that expand and support the understanding of the three principles of mind, thought, and consciousness as discovered by Sydney Banks. Well, we discovered our bylaws didn't have as discovered by Sydney Banks, and that didn't set well with some of us. So we've revised our bylaws and sent that in. But it's good to have a variety of people on the board to know things like that. I mean, it didn't start out, we didn't look for somebody to be on the board that had those skills, but when you can recognize the skills that other people have that you know, you can draw them into your group if that's helpful. Because everybody has gifts. I'd like to invite Claudia and Mary to share if they want to, because I want to make sure that that I'm meeting everybody's needs. We have a new bi-monthly evening group. A couple of members decided they wanted to do some teaching in the community. So that's ongoing now, and they're having some good attendance. YJI has a quarterly retreat for staff and members of the community. So there's teaching going on there, and that's a good place to get some experience teaching where you have good feedback and good backup. You know, when you're teaching with your friends and community that want to be there, it always works out. What else do we have going on?
Well,
Can I
Carla
just
Hardy.
Can I interrupt you just for a second, because we have a right at the end, isn't it interesting? I think we've got 5 minutes to go, and somebody has popped something in the Q&A box. So can I read that out to you, not anonymously?
Uh-huh.
Enjoy learning how each one of you made each of what you did. Enjoy learning how each one of you made each of what you did and are doing in your community. I may have missed this since I came in 10 minutes late, but wondering how big was the size of your location and population when you all began three principles there? Has its population changed since the three principles began there?
Well, I would guess that was 14 years ago that we started. I think we were about 180,000 back then. And now it's hard to say exactly. I know the city of Des Moines is 200,000, but with the surrounding suburbs that all run into each other like one giant conglomerate of a city, it's over 300,000 now for sure. Maybe more than that. One thing we haven't done a lot of is traveling outside of the metropolitan area to do trainings. That's another opportunity. Did that answer the question? Does anybody want to add anything to that?
I will just say that within our suburb of West Des Moines, the demographics have changed considerably during the 18 years that we've been that the Youth Justice Initiative has been in existence. And so what we're finding is that just like we talk about the three principles being universal for all human beings at all ages, it's true. And so whether they're new neighbors, refugees and immigrants, or people moving from the inner city to the suburbs or vice versa, the understanding and the simple language of how we function is universal and can be a way for people to recognize our joint humanity and to be able to help each other simply by being present and caring.
Yeah, since I've left Des Moines, I think I've discovered that community can be lots of different things. It doesn't have to be our geographic location. Denver is the metropolitan area of Denver is probably 8 million. So if I thought about community in terms of 8 million people, I'd have a lot of thinking about that would probably get in my way. But it's really whatever, community is whatever. It can be whatever. Right now, for me, a lot of it is my staff within the Department of Human Services.
I guess I'd just like to say along those lines too, that when you're working with groups or people or have a training, it doesn't matter whether it's 5 people or 3 people or 30 people or 60 people. Through being awake to opportunities and working within the community, we've had the opportunity to have people present the principles at the statewide school climate conference that they hold every year. And we've had some national speakers and come in and share that time with the school climate conference, and then we'll take advantage and have a community trainings in conjunction with their time here. But just be open to the opportunities and where you're already at. Just teach where you're at. People are hungry for a better feeling.
I think also, this is Claudia, what I've seen also is that as we learn the principles for ourselves, our level of stress goes down, our level of joy and optimism and hope goes up. And that understanding that life is different and can feel different moment to moment, that's contagious. And ripples out. The knowledge naturally will ripple out. Other people want to know what's happening. What are you doing that's different? And so when we had the venue of the Youth Justice Initiative, the schools began to, because of the way the structure of the Youth Justice Initiative, the schools would send representatives to the young people's justice circles. And then those school representatives went back to their schools and said, wait a minute, Carla Hardy's one of our high school counselors, and she could see for herself how the understanding is true. And she began to have groups of young people come to meet in her office and learn and share about the 3 principles. Mitch Kunert in the 9th grade high school began to do the same thing, both with his staff and with his students. The principal of the alternative school said, I want to fashion the whole school based on the principles of restorative justice. And so a good understanding, a good feeling ripples out. People are open to they're open to optimism and hope, and that's what the 3 principles bring us.
Yeah, it kind of takes us back to the beginning of letting it unfold, to take it in for yourself and just watch it unfold.
Sorry, I got distracted. It's time to finish, but Charlotte's just let me know that somebody has raised their hands. Are you willing to stay on for a couple more minutes if somebody wants to? It's typical, right?
Sure.
I
Okay.
see Gretchen. Hi, Gretchen.
Oh, it's
Yes, actually,
somebody,
it's Gretchen.
somebody you know. Yeah, okay, it is Gretchen that's got the question.
Gretchen, would you like to come on screen? Please type yes in the chat if you would. Maybe not.
Maybe she's gone.
She did type down there, so if somebody wants to read that.
I'll read that then. I'll read it out. Thank you for all your share. I understand what you've done and what happened to people. I have a daughter who's on a board for a teen shelter in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So I'm going to let her know about this. Thank you. Hugs to you all along with abundant blessings. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Gretchen. Well, again, we've gone slightly over time, so I need to wrap it up, if you will. But thank you, and it's very different to have me not coming in and interrupting, if you like. You're all on such a flow. I just let you go with it. But thank you for sharing so much information, and it really is inspiring to me to hear just how. I think Alice said something about a spider's web, or somebody said a spider's web, and that's really how it felt to me as you were explaining what's happened and how it's rippled out. It's like that spider web effect. It's fascinating, and so much. And also to hear that, like Alice was saying just now at the end, things don't always pan out, but just try something else, try something else. And another quick point that I wanted to pull out as well is that I know when we spoke before, somebody said to me or shared with me that Sydney Banks advised you to get on with it yourselves.
Yes.
That's true, right?
That is so true. He said, it was just like we say that everybody has everything they need inside. Whatever your definition of community in the moment, know that you have everything you need inside as a microcosm community. And just share what you know. That is what Sid always told us. Just share. If you see something, you know something for yourself, that's what you share.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to end on. Right? And somebody's just sent in, Dottie, thank you so much for all your wonderful sharing, ladies. Very inspiring. So, thank you. Thank you all for your time. It's been wonderful. And if anybody would like to get in touch with you and get any information from you, find out, if they've got any tips about your 3P network, not-for-profit, or, anything along those lines, I'm sure that you're all very happy for people to do that. I think Charlotte put your contact details earlier on. I think she's probably going to do that now. It's like, there you go. There are the details of our ladies for you to get in touch with them if you have any questions or you want to share anything that might be helpful to them.
Also, our 3 Principles Network is a Gmail account. The number 3 Principles Network @gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Alice. Thank you so much again. Absolute pleasure to spend time with you. And everybody out there, thank you for your comments and for your attention. And we'll see you very, very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Take
Bye
care.
now.
Bye-bye.